I am Matt Berry in for Greedy. Guys, happy Valentine's Day, by the way. I don't love any of you. Graz, J-Mac.
Yeah, where's Chuck Ruler when you need him?
Fortenbaugh hanging out with us. Briefly, though, this is kind of a high and by for you.
Excited to be a part of every single conversation we're having today.
If you'd worn blue, you'd been all right.
I was going to say,
we're all anti-Valentine's Day here. You're the only one that's trying to get some love from anyone on this set. So that's the football portion, the gambling portion of it. We've got our NBA experts ready to go. Wendy, Bobby Marks, and Kendrick Perk, Big Perk, going to get here for the big night in the NBA as we head to the All-Star break. But let's start our Friday morning where it's officially official. The Aaron Rodgers era with the Jets is over, 2 years and out. The team said goodbye yesterday. That included statements of gratitude from team officials. There was no statement from Rodgers in the release. Now, that was their reaction. Here yesterday on NFL Live was Ryan Clarks, who had this to say about the Jets' failed Rodgers experiment and what should be next.
Well, Greeny put him on his favorite team. And for 2 years, when he talked about what it might look like if Aaron Rodgers played, it was a great time. But then when he played, when he talked, when he led, none of those things came to fruition. And so if you're going to get Aaron Rodgers the player, you have to know you're getting a diminished Aaron Rodgers with all the ego, all the arrogance, all the things that came along with being a four-time MVP. So those are, to me, the more important conversations if you're looking to bring Aaron Rodgers on your team to finish out a first-ballot Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, and those are the aftershocks of the decision that was made. And it was widely reported a week ago that this, in fact, could be what happened. It was official yesterday, Graz. How much do you think the Jets weighed this decision of whether to keep Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, big picture, they weighed it, but the speed with which it happened tells you that they knew what they were going to do when the offseason started. I mean, the coach and GM have been in place, almost 2 weeks now, and this is the first big decision that they've made. It makes a lot of sense. Look, 2 years, they won 6 games. It didn't work out the way they wanted it to. And now you look at your future. If you're the Jets, you have a new head coach, a new GM, you're starting fresh. What are you going to have Aaron Rodgers for 1 more year? And then you have to start over anyway? So I think it makes a lot of sense. All the points RC is making are valid. You know, he has a lot of gravity to him, right? Like if you keep Aaron Rodgers now and you're a new head coach and GM, as long as he's there, everything's about him, right? And so I think it was probably in the end pretty easy for them to decide we need to be thinking about the longer term, the bigger picture.
Yeah. There's a couple things to that. One, like RC said, we all agree, he's a first-ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest pure throws of the football ever. But there is the stuff that comes with Aaron Rodgers. Having said that, what do you think who should look at a player like Aaron Rodgers with what he has left at 41 years?
Well, I think that's the challenge because Graz just said it. You win 6 games in a time there. And I do think he got better towards the end of the season last year. But at the same time, you, to me, have to be a team that you feel like adding Aaron Rodgers to your team takes you to the point where now you're competing for a Super Bowl. Because if not, you're just putting a stopgap to maybe get a wild card game or get close to the playoffs. And then you have to hit reset again next year. So as I look around the league, I don't know that there's a team that feels like, hey, you know what? We add Aaron Rodgers. Everybody's throwing out the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't see a Rodgers-led Pittsburgh Steelers team winning a Super Bowl or getting to the Super Bowl in the AFC with Baltimore and Buffalo and the Bengals trying to retool as well. And then obviously the Kansas City Chiefs. So to me, that's the challenge for a quarterback that's now going to be a year older, coming off a subpar season with the thought of now you get him and this elevates your team so much.
And it begs the question, does Rodgers still have the skill set to go to a team that's a quarterback away from getting him to that next level? And that's kind of the biggest gray area for a team.
There's no doubting his skill. It's a question of, at 41 years old, can he maintain that over a period of time? Can he stay healthy enough to be productive? We did see some good moments from him this past year. We also saw some pretty lousy ones, and that makes a lot of sense for a player at this stage in his career. The list of quarterbacks that have performed at a championship level past the age of 40 has one name on it. One. And Aaron Rodgers thought he was going to be the second one, and he hasn't been. If I'm a team, I'm looking at my quarterback options, and somebody says, Aaron Rodgers, okay, how'd that go with the Jets? Well, they won 6 games in 2 years. He missed a year because of injury. He played hurt another year. Everybody got fired. Now he's 41. We signing up for that? I'm not.
That sounds incredibly daunting if you put it that way. But
but context matters, right? And you have to understand the circumstances. He got you towards Achilles, and remember he was a player coming back from season-ending injury. We saw what happened with Kirk Cousins and his injuries. So you have to ask yourself: is the skills diminished, or was he a player coming back from an injury that takes a year and a half to play at a higher level? Not saying that he's going to be the Aaron Rodgers of old, but it doesn't still mean that you can't win football games. And at the end of the day, football nowadays are played more above the shoulders than it is above the heads because of the rules. You can't really take advantage of a quarterback that's small, that maybe slowed down because of the rules. We do know that he still has that football acumen, and he can maybe be a force multiplier for a team that can run the football and just ask him to be the old Aaron Rodgers 3 or 4 times a game.
Let's step away from the player Aaron Rodgers, because I think it's important to get into the Jets now.
Yes.
And you kind of alluded to it a second ago. Take a look at what this cost the Jets during this 2-year run that amounted to nothing. $75 million to Aaron Rodgers, a pair of second-round picks to Green Bay, over $30 million to get receivers that Rodgers wanted. And if they release Rodgers before June 1st, they owe $49 million in dead money. I mean, this graphic, Bart Scott, puts into perspective just how bad this ended up being for the Jets. So where do they go from here?
I mean, they took big swings, right? And it was important for them because they were losing the locker room to some of their younger players. You know, Garrett Wilson used to be on my radio show. He canceled during the middle of it because he just was dejected, right? And we saw with the arrival of Devontae Adams, he became less and less more of the offense when this was supposed to be an offense that was catered and built around him and Breece Hall's skill set. So it was important for the Jets to say, hey, we care about the young players, because the good thing about Joe Douglas and what he did is he found them the talent. I mean, Jamal Adams' trade was a gift that kept on giving. It got them 3 first-round draft picks, Jermaine Johnson, who we think is certified, Sauce Gardner, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Vera Tucker, right? So they have a good young nucleus. Now it's time to let those guys be the loudest voices in the locker room, and it was time to take a big shadow away, a guy that casts a big shadow in Aaron Rodgers. So I think they have to try and find a quarterback, and that's hard to do it in today's game. The draft isn't somewhere where you can find that. Do they need a bridge quarterback? They have Tyrod Taylor there. The last regime, it was all about, I forget, Jordan Travis, right?
Yes.
And they were hoping that he was going to be the guy that comes save the day, because you need a cheap quarterback when it's time to pay the credit card bill that the Jets are going to incur for this young talent, all living up to their expectations.
And Jordan Travis, he had the injury in college, and all of a sudden he's not the value.
Hasn't been able to play or really even practice, right? So they don't know anything about him. This is the lesson of the Aaron Rodgers time with the Jets is this is what can happen when you whiff on the second pick, right? They take Zach Wilson with the second pick in the draft, and he didn't pan out. Now you're scrambling for any kind of solution. And you mentioned they took big swings. And Aaron said before the season, if this doesn't work out, we're all going to be unemployed. And that's exactly what happened. They took a big swing, but you don't have to take a big swing if you build it from foundationally with the right guy.
To your part with whiffing on Zach Wilson, this is a team who then whiffed on Sam Darnold, who obviously is developed somewhere else, and Geno Smith. So to sit here and say that, well, maybe we should draft the quarterback, I've got examples of how drafted a quarterback for the New York Jets hasn't worked.
Well, we got one that did, and that was Mark Sanchez. And I think this is more similar to the Mark Sanchez situation. They have 4 of the 5 linemen that they need. We know that Vera Tucker can play. Simpson worked out. We talk about Fashanu as well. They have the talent around and the infrastructure to just run the football and bring a young quarterback around slowly with a mentor in Tyrod Taylor.
By the way, are we sure Garrett Wilson didn't cancel because of you?
Oh. Yeah, probably.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. Much more from these guys coming up in just a bit. But this morning's wake-up call.
Agak ka na iswang eh. Cái vấn đề mình sẽ làm thành cái tai nha.